There are no slides from me. So for 15 minutes, my plan really was just to stand here and just do a little bit of a girl talk. Just like how I talk to my girlfriends for a coffee. So if after the 15 minutes you'd still like to be my friend, happy to connect after. So a little brief introduction to myself and my background if you've only just sauntered in. My name is Megan. My background is in neuroscience and clinical mental health research. I co-founded a digital health company called Neurum 6 years ago, which uses machine learning to personalize care for every mind's growth and healing. I've recently taken up a new role as executive director for Kelly Support Group, a nonprofit supporting youth mental health and youth empowerment. This is incredibly important because the stat here right now is that it's 1 youth suicide per week. Before all of that, I worked as a research fellow at Yale School of Medicine in the maternal health unit. So I was used to women, moms, kids, being surrounded with them and being at work every day with them. But something I quickly learned was that mental health and well-being, it didn't happen in a lab. It didn't happen in the doctor's office that I worked in, right? It happens when we do things like when we're experiencing pelvic pain in a boardroom, when we're about to close the biggest deal of our lives. It happens when we're laying in bed next to our partner and we feel restless and it feels like there are ants under our skin. It happens when we get hot flashes and brain fog when we're out grocery shopping. So something that was really apparent to me was that women's health issues are often stigmatized and misunderstood. So let's draw this little Venn diagram, right? Women's health issues, highly stigmatized, highly misunderstood. Then the other circle is mental health, highly stigmatized, highly misunderstood. Now imagine this intersection of women's mental health in the face of health challenges. Our mental health risk then doubles. Now, women facing health challenges often experience mental health issues at a clinical grade, like anxiety, depression, stress. And these can exacerbate the physical symptoms as well as make recovery very difficult. So for example, chronic stress. We've all experienced stress to some level in our lives. Mind you, stress is one of those things that gets a little bit of a bad boy reputation. Acute stress is okay. Acute stress are things like if you've got a project due or you're an athlete and you're playing a game, right? You can channel that into performance. Chronic stress is when that festers. That's not good. Chronic stress in the face of chronic illness, terminal illness, or even acute illness can weaken the immune system and make it really difficult for our body to fight back. Things like clinical depression can also reduce a person's motivation to follow treatment plans. So yes, this really dire critical intersection. This dire intersection has less funding compared to other medical conditions. Less than 2% of overall research funding goes towards that. And it's less inclusive in terms of the demographics in the research space as well. So what does that mean? That means we just don't do as much research on women in general, so let alone any sub-demographics, right? It's really a missed opportunity for us as well to further the field because we also don't have, even our scientists, our academics that's working at the cutting edge, front lines of the space, there's also a lack of representation. So we really, really have a lot of work we're trying to do now to play catch up. So that's the forefront of medical innovation and research. I'm sure that the everyday person, someone in Landmark right now, is feeling some sort of isolation, confusion, and shame. Now, I get 15 minutes, but 15 minutes is nowhere near enough time to even scratch the surface because women's health isn't just gynecological, right? It's, like Professor Kwong said, it's cancer. It's also non-communicable diseases like helping girls and women adopt healthy lifestyles to help us live longer and better. It's maternal health. It's sexual violence. It's fewer pensions and benefits to address healthcare and social service than our male counterparts because maybe we've left the workforce and we didn't go back to work. So that's just to highlight the complexity of the challenges, right, and the landscape today of what women's health means. And I can't stick that into 15 minutes. So let's just get through the basics today in terms of what we can do in our everyday lives right now. So we're going to explore how we can create spaces of kindness and non-judgment in ourselves and do that for the people around us, or do that for our loved ones that may be going through health challenges. And let's make sure that we continue this conversation beyond these 15 minutes, yeah? So first things first, self-compassion. How do we create that kind, non-judgmental space inside ourselves? Now, I'm going to be honest with you and just talk for a second as someone that has difficulty getting pregnant, and I harbored so much shame and guilt for that. And the way I was talking to myself in my own head is absolutely awful. People look at me and they go, "You're in the mental health field, aren't you? Shouldn't you have sparkling mental health?" I'm just a human being, right? I'm still going to feel the feelings. I'm still going to sometimes fall back into unhealthy coping mechanisms sometimes. Just because somebody operates the roller coaster doesn't mean they're not going to scream when they get on, right? So I have to seriously check myself, because the voice inside my head was saying things like, "Oh, if you rested more, then maybe you could have gotten pregnant. If you didn't hustle hard in your career, maybe you could have gotten pregnant." And I work in tech, so it was as if I was like trying to do conditional expressions in coding and just code myself into pregnancy somehow. Like, oh, if I did this, then that. Now, our brains are really, really smart. Our brain does this thing where we take our data and our experiences and we just try to make sense of what we're going through. And my brain needed a story to make all of these complex feelings and these challenges make sense. It just went down the unproductive and unkind route. But we can override and rewrite that code. Starting with self-compassion means you got to treat yourself the same way as you treat a friend. I know it sounds super simple, but we're often our biggest critics. When facing a health challenge, for example, you can tell yourself, "Look, I'm just doing my best. I'm just going to deal with what's on my plate right now." Or after a setback or a disappointing doctor's appointment, like I've gone through recently, is just reminding yourself, this is a difficult time, but I deserve patience and understanding, the same kind of patience and understanding that you would provide to a friend who just walked out of a difficult doctor's appointment and got some unhappy news, right? We can practice positive self-talk. We can replace that self-critical voice in our minds with encouraging and supportive inner dialogue. So instead of saying things like, "I'm so weak," but we can say things like, "I'm resilient, and I'm just making progress every day. I'm okay with just, as long as I put one foot in front of the other day to day, that's already success. That's what success looks like for me." Or replacing absolute terms like, "I'll never get better," with, "Recovery takes time, and I'm just taking I'm taking the positive steps that I can forward, and that's good enough." We can acknowledge our struggles without the self-blame, right? What we're going through, our health challenges, they're not us. They're not internalized traits. They're not our personality. We're not bad people. We can recognize that health challenges are not our fault. So instead of saying things like, "Why is my body failing me?" we can try, "My body is doing its best to heal, and I'm supporting it the best I can." Or my favorite, replacing, "I should have prevented this. I could have prevented this. I would have prevented this," with, "Health issues can happen to anyone, and I'm doing what I can to address them now." Now, everything has to be from the inside out. Once we've learned to create that kind, non-judgmental space up in here, how can we do that for other people? Let's say you've got a friend, or there's someone in the audience right now who's going through it. How do we create that kind space and extend that forward? One way is to practice active listening. I know, it's one of those things, right? We were like, I'm listening to you right now. I'm a perfect active listener. Well, the thing is, yes, we all inherently know how to listen and to take information in. But it's about giving your full attention. It's about holding that space without interrupting or offering unsolicited advice, as tempting as it is. As tempting as it is because sometimes we may have gone through similar experiences. Maybe we were, cancer survivors. Maybe we had a similar diagnosis. But everyone's experiences are completely different. Maybe you had an incredible support system around you, but somebody else may not have had that same experience. So your healing journeys is going to be very idiosyncratic. We sometimes don't need to fill the space as well. How many times have we had someone sit in front of us and we feel a bit uncomfortable with the silence and we feel like we need to just fill it just to make the other person feel better, right? Sometimes resisting the urge to offer solutions, maintaining eye contact, nodding, listening, letting someone else express their experience fully can be extremely validating and helpful already. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes less is enough. Now, if you are going to fill that space, we can use empathetic language. So phrases like, "Okay, I hear you," or "That sounds really challenging," can be very supportive and not try to blanket that experience with positivity. So if a colleague, for example, mentions that, look, she's going through early menopause, saying something like, "Look, that sounds like a lot to process," or "I'm here if you need to talk more about it," and making sure they know that you can hold that space for them, it can be extremely helpful and makes them know, look, that I have someone in my support ecosystem now, and it depends on whether I feel ready or not to take that step forward. And they're not going to judge me. Here's what you don't fill that space with. Avoid comparisons. We all know that there's some well-meaning auntie that we know somewhere in our lives, but every person's journey is unique. We have to refrain from comparing experiences. For example, when discussing my fertility struggles, right? Resisting things like, this is one I heard recently was, "Oh, my cousin got pregnant, after trying for years, so don't give up. Just keep going." Instead of really just hearing all of the things that I've just said. So it actually felt like quite dismissive and, lost a little bit of hope there. Or if someone shares their anxiety around a mammogram, right, as Professor Kwong just mentioned, extremely critical. Avoid saying things like, "It's not as bad as childbirth." Simply acknowledge someone's feelings without the comparison. The final thing is practical steps for nurturing that non-judgmental space. You've let someone know, look, you can come to me, but what if someone doesn't feel ready? You can't force them. So how can you hold that space and make sure that they know, hey, when I come to you, I can make sure that I get supported in the way on my terms, right? This event today with Prestige is already the step one. The first thing is education and awareness. So learning about various women's health issues to better understand and empathize is a fantastic step one. The second thing is challenging stigmas. So speaking up against harmful misconceptions or stereotypes around women's health and harmful stereotypes and misconceptions about mental health can be incredibly helpful, and in tandem of course, learning the knowledge that Professor Kwong and Dr. Lo will be sharing shortly. I feel like they've strategically sandwiched me between the pair of them because of that, because we can't parse out mental health from our physical health. So I'm just going to wrap up real quick. Remember, creating kind and non-judgmental spaces is an ongoing process. Starts from the inside out. Starts with how you treat yourself. Then you know how to learn how to extend that and interact with others. Yes, there are clinical models of care, as in, yes, of course, like in mental health, we have like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, like DBT, ACT, for example. But let's not also forget the power of peer support, because whether you like it or not, all of you are the frontest of the frontline healthcare workers, whether you know it or like it or not. You are the frontline workers for your loved ones and for yourselves. So I firmly believe in reinforcing mental health care into medical care, and I highly encourage each of you to prioritize your mental well-being and seek the support you need, and to support the people around you.